Welcome back to the Keep the Promise podcast, where we honor the commitment that firefighters and first responders make to serve others while giving them the tools to thrive both on and off the job. Today, we're joined by someone who has not only faced the unique challenges of our profession, but has also turned those struggles into a powerful message of hope and healing. That is Rachael Belcher. She has spent over 27 years in the fire service, most of the time answering countless calls as a paramedic with the Baltimore County Fire Department. She's been on the front lines of disaster, from 31 days on the Gulf Coast after Hurricane Katrina to the everyday emergencies we all know so well. But her journey didn't stop at saving lives. She has also saved her own. After facing a series of difficult events, Rachael made the courageous decision to seek mental health treatment. Now, she's on a mission to dismantle the stigma around seeking help and to educate first responders about the duty-bound grief, a type of grief she believes is unique to those of us who answer the call. In this episode, we'll explore how Rachael's experiences have shaped her career, her insights on resilience, and practical ways that we can all do the inner work to stay strong. Without further ado, let's dive into the episode.
Welcome to the Keep the Promise podcast, where we help build resilient and well-rounded firefighters.
Rachael, welcome to the podcast. I'm sorry I misspelled your name on all the paperwork.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
In my defense, I don't remember if Kirsten gave me the right name, but I'm going to blame her just because,
There's only one letter missing. Whatever.
Got to throw shade at the officers just because that's what we do. So let's get right into it. People are probably wondering, who is this chick? Why is she on the podcast? So can you take us back to the journey of your fire service career? How you started, why you started that way, and where you are these days?
Well, the journey starts back in the 1900s.
Oh, God. It makes me feel so old when we say it like that.
My children had the audacity to ask if color existed when I was little.
Oh, God. I mean, they're not wrong because, yeah.
Rude. Yeah. So probably my senior year in high school, a bunch of my buddies volunteered and they seemed like they had a whole lot of fun. So, of course, it started based off of, social yearnings. Went and got my EMT. I was a volunteer EMT for several years and then grew up a little bit, worked a bunch of non-public safety jobs. And in 2001, I decided to apply to be a 911 operator. And I worked there at the dispatch center for 3 years as a 911 operator and becoming cross-trained as a police dispatcher. That was a lot of fun. But I am not the type of person who can be tethered to a desk in the basement of a courthouse. That is just not my thing. So I am the daughter of a state trooper and kind of always thought I would become a police officer. But I saw that they were hiring for the fire department and I already had the qualifications and I thought, I don't know if I want to do it as a career because then it won't be fun anymore. But I applied and I got in and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I got in the fire department in 2004 and shortly after getting in, I got my paramedic and I've been a paramedic ever since. And that's really the journey. It's full immersion.
Full immersion. I think most of us start with that social approach that it's just a fun place to go hang out when we're young and dumb. And the realization that wait a minute, I can make something out of this for the rest of my life. And when you get to that point, it's like, wow, this is insane. You're paying me? Guys, you're paying me to do this? The paycheck hits every 2 weeks? I was doing this for fun and for free back in the day.
Right. And, when I first started, we actually got to hang out with our shift. We got to have fun and joke around and bust each other's balls and, have good fights in the kitchen and just fun stuff, not so much anymore, especially post COVID. If you're on a medic, you do not see your shift, maybe for the whole trip. But yeah, that feeling of are they actually paying me to hang out with my friends?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's one of the best feelings ever to spend time with those absolute degenerates in the firehouse.
Agreed.
Well, I mean, I got to throw a shot across the bow and say good on you for not going the law enforcement route, because
I am so glad. I am so grateful that I did not go into law enforcement. I have a lot of respect for those guys. Don't get me wrong, but I'm very satisfied with my choice.
Get paid to sleep, as they always say.
Well, there was a time that was true.
Right. R.I.P. sleeping. Thanks, COVID.
Right.
So you've pretty much run the gamut of everything from listening to the 911 calls to being that person taking care of whoever calls 911. That gives you a bit of a different perspective into the first responder world. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
It does. So it was really interesting and a big eye opener for me being on the receiving end of that 911 phone call, being able to hear, the panic in someone's voice and get all the details and try to reassure them. Because, 911 operators ask a lot of friggin' questions. I don't know if you've ever actually had to call 911, but it is quite annoying, the amount of questions that they ask. And sometimes people get extremely frustrated and they're like, just send me the MFing ambulance or whatever. So, they're coming. I just need to ask you a few more questions. And sitting in that chair and not ever finding out what happened was just, man, that really gets to you. And, that's why I really am a champion for 911 operators or first responders too. I know that may be an unpopular opinion, but they are. It's almost more difficult being in that basement, being tethered to that desk and being able to hear only part of the situation and never having an opportunity to know what the outcome was.
No closure, huh?
No closure.
How did that affect you?
It made me want to do more. I was like, and I think we're all just really nosy.
No.
We want to know all the business. We want to know all the information, even the calls that we aren't on. We're like, what happened? What happened? We want to know the deets. And, I wanted to know the deets. I wanted to know all of it. And I wanted to help on a deeper level.
Real quick before we jump back in. Firefighters don't leave each other behind. We look out for our own. Right now, there's a firefighter out there, maybe a rookie, maybe a seasoned veteran, who needs this podcast. They need the lessons, the mindset, and the training tips. But they'll never get them unless you help them. Here's how you can help right now. On Apple Podcasts, tap the 5 stars, then scroll down and write just a few words about what the show has done for you. On Spotify, tap the 3 dots, select Rate Show, and drop your rating. It takes less than 60 seconds, it costs you nothing, and it helps one more firefighter get better, stronger, and more prepared. We look out for each other. This is one small way that you can pay it forward. All right, back to the show. I was going to say, usually the answer you expect is, oh, I wanted to make a bigger difference. You're like, nah, man, I just want to give me the tea. I just want to know the tea. I want to know what ended up. You'd be the one out there vacuuming the grass at 3 a.m. if there's a bunch of police lights outside, aren't you?
Right. When we used to do standbys for warrants and things like that for the police, my partner and I would laugh because it would, people would come out of the woodwork. They would be walking their baby in a stroller that clearly hadn't been out of the garage in 15 years, or riding their unicycle, or mowing their lawn with it out action just to know what's going on.
Yeah, it's always fascinating watching these people start coming out of the woodwork whenever there's flashing lights out in their neighborhood. 3 a.m, it's 20 degrees outside, and you're like, that poor dog wants to be inside, curled up, and you nosy bastard decided to take him out for a walk.
And also the point of not having to ask permission to go pee was a big determining factor for not being a dispatcher anymore.
Man, I was over here, like, I came into this whole thing, I was like, oh, we're going to get these, like, crazy, like, altruistic ideas of what she wanted to do. You're like, nah, man, I wanted to know what was happening, and I wanted to be able to go to the bathroom on my own terms. What's up?
On my own terms. Right.
Yeah.
And boom, look at me now.
Yeah, you got in the fire department, and you still can't go to the bathroom on your own terms because the bells might go off.
Right. Little did I know.
So, volunteer, dispatcher, paramedic, and you were still a baby medic when you went down to the Gulf Coast after Katrina. How did that come about?
So I had only been in for about a year, and they put out this call to action. They were recruiting 500 two-man teams to go down. We actually, it was through FEMA. We actually got sworn in as FEMA employees for that month throughout the country. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply. Why not? It sounds really cool. I don't have a husband. I don't have any kids. Why not? And they picked me, and they picked a significantly large group of our fire department's personnel. I think I want to say it might have been 20 of us total.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was, young and dumb and wanted to have some fun. And on the thing, it said, pack a backpack. Basically, it was one backpack. All your stuff for the entire month had to be in the backpack. It said, prepare for austere conditions. It said, we don't know how long you're going to be there, but it'll be at least 30 days. And I was pumped.
How was that?
It was eye-opening. It was amazing. It was an education for sure. We started off in Atlanta, Georgia. Our first assignment was in Alabama. We were in Montgomery, Alabama, and Tuskegee, and all around there, setting up centers where people could come, and we would get them registered for FEMA, and Red Cross was set up there too, so they would get gift cards and stuff for food and things like that. That was somewhat short-lived. We then moved to Biloxi, Mississippi, and spent a majority of our time there. We stayed in the CB Naval Base. It was a giant warehouse. Basically, we all slept on cots. It was probably I'd say a half-mile walk to the shower trailer, and it was Mississippi in September. So by the time you got to the trailer, took your shower, and got back to the thing, you needed another shower already. It was still very muggy down there. But the destruction, the devastation was, incredible. Nothing like I've ever seen before. We helped out at clinics. We continued to get people registered. We were helping the community get set up with their FEMA trailers. We would go out to their site and identify the electric and the sewage and the water lines and make sure it was clear of debris. And then we discovered that there was a quite large community down there that was Vietnamese only speaking. There's a really large community down south that does shrimp fishing. I don't know what it's called. Shrimping, I guess. And they couldn't read any of the literature because they don't speak English. So we were able to facilitate some Vietnamese literature. We were able to make contact with this community. We volunteered after we got off. We worked 12-hour days. In the evenings, we found the Vietnamese Buddhist temple to volunteer at. And I was able to, through my mom, who worked with Cargill Salt at the time, get an entire tractor trailer of rice delivered because that's what they said they needed most. That's the biggest staple. A donation of an entire tractor trailer of rice. And funnily enough, on our first day there, we were introduced to two people that were helping to full clothing donations. And it was Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams.
Wow.
So we spent several weeks with those two riding around the dolphins that got loose from the aquarium and were recaptured were actually kept in pools on this Seabee Naval Base. So we would go with Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams to like see the dolphins.
Not a sentence that I expected to hear. Not a sentence you expect to hear post something like Katrina.
No. So, I mean, it was hard work. We truly did work probably, I don't know, 15-hour days, I would say.
And what takeaways do you have from that time?
Don't take anything for granted. That's my biggest one, is your life can truly change in the blink of an eye. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are, what your education is. Your life can change in an instant. And I just kind of learned not to take that for granted. And also, when you have an opportunity to have an adventure, take it every single time. Because even if there's sucky parts, there's always a takeaway of something to learn or somebody cool to meet, experience that you would not have had otherwise.
Yeah, and I think we see the first part of what you said so often in the first responder world, in the fire service especially, that things can change in the blink of an eye. But I think that at some point or other, we're all guilty of getting used to that routine of go to the firehouse, work your shift, come home, do whatever, so on and so forth. And we kind of sometimes lose that sense of adventure.
We kind of fall into that comfort zone and just start sailing. And, the comfort zone is also stagnation. And you're not growing, you're not learning, you're not, doing the things that'll propel you to Ryan Gosling.
What is it? Only dead fish go with the flow?
Yeah. Yes. That's exactly right. You gotta swim against the current sometimes.
Yeah. And that's something that you had to do when we fast forward to 2023, when I don't want to say you threw in the towel, because that's not quite what you did, but you kind of tapped and said, I need help.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Tell me more.
I would say it started right before COVID actually started. There was some kind of shift that happened within me. Anybody that knows me at work up until that point knew me as when I first got in, I wore pigtail buns like Princess Leia on my head. And my shift would make fun of me because they said I would hop out of the medic and go, wee, we're at a cardiac arrest. And I just I don't know. I tried to maintain optimism and, not toxic optimism. I still work for the fire department. So I certainly have a sarcastic, cynical vibe as well.
Good.
But I most of the time was pretty damn happy to be at work and feeling good. And something started to happen where I noticed that I was more angry. I was more not wanting to be social. I was isolating. Instead of sitting at the table with my shift, I was going into the back room in the dark hole TV room and bundling up, between calls and just sitting there and scrolling on my phone or whatever. And I said, this is not me. And I just thought, I've been doing this job for a long time. Maybe, I'm probably just burnt out, getting to the point where I'm one of those salty old, fuck this place kind of thing. And, in 2020, we as a department lost, a friend of mine who ended up passing away in her sleep. She was also the wife of my captain at the time, my captain and I went to the academy together. Had known each other 18 years by that point. And, I was there for him absolutely as much as I possibly could be, like families should do for each other when things like that happen. And I noticed that I could not cry. I was devastated. I was incredibly sad, not only for the loss of my friend, but for the loss of my friend's spouse. And I couldn't cry. And I was like, this is not normal. This is not normal. And then I kind of did the mental gymnastics of, well, for the past 18 years, I've had to compartmentalize my emotions. You have to close the curtain so that you can continue to do the job. You can't necessarily show your emotions all the time. And it's very difficult to kind of adapt that way of living at work and not let it carry on into your personal life as well. And I've found now to this day that, this is a really common thing for us. So, that incident was, there is something wrong with me, I guess. I called it brain damage. Like, I have brain damage. Like, I knew I felt sad. I knew that I should be crying, and I just couldn't produce a tear, which then, of course, gave me the guilt of why can't I cry for my friend? And that's a whole nother thing. So time went by. About 2 years later, 2023, at the end of 2022, I had 3 back-to-back suicides, gunshot wound to the head. I think we all have a trigger call, and that's my trigger call. And I've had so many. The first one was the son of one of our retired captains.
Ugh.
The second one was, someone else I didn't know, obviously, just the patient. And then the third one was a gentleman who attempted to, what is the appropriate term now? Carry out suicide or complete suicide, but he did not. He was still alive, and his first name was the same name as my son. And thankfully, he's actually still alive today. Not in a functional state, but he's still alive today. But those 3 calls just did something to my brain, and I remember after the last call, everybody's saying, "Are you okay?" And I'm thinking, like, in that second that they asked me the question, my brain is saying, well, what do I say? Yeah, I'm fine. The standard answer. Yeah, just another day. Just another thing. Or do I say, no, I'm not okay? And then the way that it was then, oh, well, we need to call all these people in, and it just felt like whatever they were going to do would be too drastic if I told the truth. So I was just like, and I kind of just kept thinking, there's got to be something better for us to ask each other than, are you okay? Because the answer after something like that is no. But it's okay to not be okay after that. It's just not okay if you're staying there in that state. So I made the decision to leave my family for 30 days and checked into Harbor of Grace in January of 2023 for a 30-day inpatient treatment stay.
And how was that?
Very difficult. Being separated from my kids, very difficult. Being around a lot of other people that are also not doing well was difficult. And not, it was because I guess I needed to see another way, or, but I mean, everybody was there for the same reason I was there. So of course they were in a bad place. And that facility caters to police and firefighters, police and fire department personnel, whereas like the Center of Excellence is only fire department. So just kind of hearing the perspective, there was several retirees there, and it really kind of opened my mind to, we have to do something because our brothers and sisters are retiring from this job. And I think the statistic is like, on average, we're living for 7 years after retirement. You know, we put our
That's pitiful.
It is. It's scary, and it does not have to be that way. And, you know, there are some of us who put our entire identity into this job. And then when you lose it, and you lose the camaraderie, when you lose your buddies, when you lose the thing that drives you to wake up every day, you know, sometimes it's really hard at that stage in life to find a different passion or another path. And I think that was one of the most powerful things, honestly, to see how many retirees were there and how absolutely drained they were, and, you know, had nowhere else to go. Many of them had attempted to take their life. Many of them had, at the very least, thought about doing that. And it just really shines a bright light on the epidemic that's happening, that there are solutions to, and why are these solutions not happening?
I want to go back when you kept talking about how difficult it was. Did you find that it was difficult taking that step because as responders, we bring order to chaos, and walking through those doors is basically saying, I cannot bring order to my own chaos. And we are awful at relinquishing that control. It's so funny watching firefighters, police officers, whoever it might be, who would rather drive 10, 12 hours than get on the plane because they still have control behind the wheel. They're terrified of whoever's flying the plane. And you know what? I found myself doing that. Like the plane jolts, I was like, I fucking hope this pilot's good, man. I hope he's good. I hope she's awesome, because I don't like that little jolt. Was it a difficult part?
Very, very much so. In order to heal, you basically have to crack yourself open and be the most vulnerable that you've ever been. And you're only there for 30 days. You don't know these people. These are all strangers. Some of us can't even be vulnerable to our spouse or our best friend. But if you are truly going there to get as much as you can out of this experience, you have to be fucking raw. You have to crack yourself open and pour out the contents and let everybody, all of these strangers, see it all. You know, and that goes even into like your childhood experiences and things like that, things that people don't necessarily realize impact how we deal with stressful situations and trauma and all of these things. So you have to be willing to be incredibly honest with others, sure, but first and foremost yourself. So yes, that was incredibly difficult to get to the point where it was like, I mean, I'm here. Why waste my time? Let me just spill it. Let me just spill the guts, spill the beans. And I think like once a couple people do it, other people are like, oh, okay, we're doing this. Okay. I didn't really intend to do this, but, and it's really beautiful to see people who have held in things for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 35, 45, whatever years, just vomiting out all this stuff that they've been shoving down And just simply the act of telling your own truth is really, really powerful.
How was it walking out those doors after those 30 days?
Scary, actually. Scary, but in a different way than walking in. Because now you have these tools. Now you've learned how to be vulnerable, how to be raw, how to feel your emotions. And you're like, well, I have to go back and do my job now that I've built up all these protective mechanisms to do. Like, I have built this shell around me so that I could do my job. Now I just spent the last 30 days breaking this shell away to get to the squishy middle. And now I have to return to do my job. And what is going to happen on that first fucked up call? Like, am I going to be okay?
Were you?
I was. Now I'm not saying I was like, whatever. It just kind of like begins to hit different, I guess, where you see it from a different perspective. You are observing this thing rather than being a part of it, if that makes sense.
So you're a little bit more detached. You're not taking on that sadness, those vibes, that grief. Is that what I'm getting out of this?
I think that's a good way to put it. And of course, there's always going to be those sticky calls that, no matter how much healing journeys you go on, are going to get to us. But yeah, I felt more prepared, and I did not have a miraculous healing after 30 days. I mean, it probably took me another year and a half after that to feel like, okay, all right, I got this. I feel good.
Interesting. So 30 days to get the tools, and then a lot of months after the fact for you to employ those tools.
Yes.
Was it like an epiphany? You woke up one day, you're like, hallelujah, I'm healed. Or did you just notice that as the time went on, you're like, oh, this would have fucked with me in the past?
Yes. Yeah. I noticed that it was not an epiphany. It was not like a light bulb moment. And I mean, I was going to therapy at the beginning there. I was going to therapy once a week. I found an incredible EMDR therapist, and that follow-up portion, I got the tools at Harbor of Grace, but that follow-up portion is really what changed my life, because I don't think no matter what, 30 days is going to heal anything completely, but it at least equips you with what you need to know going forward. So that therapy after, and all the tools that I got from that I could start to kind of put in place for myself in the following, days, weeks, months, years. A lot of those things I'm still using today. And yeah, something will happen and I'll say like, okay, yeah, that that I would not be okay with this 2 years ago. I literally felt like I had brain damage.
Oh.
I felt like I was broken, and I did not think that there was any way for me to be any different. I just thought that this is just what happens to us eventually.
Like a cracked piece of fine china that you can't put back together.
Right. That it's just like, well, this is how I am now, and no one wants to be around me.